The College Football Playoff Committee has released its Week 14 rankings, and it is clear that Alabama holds the key to chaos.
I got a feel-good story for you.
What else do you want the man to do?
We're counting down the best plays.
How do you define success?
George Wrighster.
Why does Alabama hold the key to chaos when we haven't had any groundbreaking losses since the committee started ranking teams? And this is the ranking before the final ranking on Sunday. So everything up to this point matters. Don't tell us it'll work out and figure out, because we haven't had that in any way, shape, form, or fashion. However, college football tells us that there will be drama. There is never not any drama. But the question is, what does that look like? And the first things that we have to figure out is what is true at this point in time. So let's go through the rankings for a second. You have Georgia, who's back-to-back champions, at number 1, Michigan at number 2, Washington at number 3, Florida State at 4, Oregon at number 5, Ohio State at number 6, Texas at 7, and Alabama at number 8. And we won't even get into Missouri at 9 and Penn State at 10 until a little bit later on. But now let's go back to what is true at this point in time. It looks like, and it appears, that if you finish undefeated, then you will probably get in with wins this weekend in the conference championship. Obviously, Georgia plays Alabama. You have Ohio State playing Iowa. You have Washington playing Oregon, and you have Florida State playing Louisville. Now, if all 4 of those teams win, they're going to get into playoffs. Now, whether they should or not is a whole different conversation. And the other thing that appears to be very true is that Oregon controls their own destiny. They have the best loss in all of America at this point. Now, I do understand why people from Ohio State are like, hold on, fam. We lost to Michigan, who's ranked 1 spot above Washington, so we have the best loss. The funny part about that whole situation is that you have Oregon and Ohio State having to call their biggest rivals, who they hate with a passion, a great loss. Dude, acknowledging that the other team's a great team, that is painful in and of itself. Now, the other part is, should we be ranking the 4 best teams at this point in time, or teams with the best resume / most deserving? Because a lot of times on television, people will tell you, oh man, they're undefeated. But we've known that all undefeated teams are not created equally for a bunch of reasons. Number 1, they don't play the same schedules. You have the Big Ten, Pac-12, and Big 12 all play 9 conference games, while the ACC and the SEC only play 8 conference games, and you have some of their teams that don't even play 10 Power 5 games, which we've gone over in other videos, artificially inflates the number of wins throughout a conference and all of that stuff. So, who are the 4 best teams at this point in time? You guys leave that in the comments. Because Georgia clearly appears to be one of the 4 best teams. So does Michigan. I would say Washington and Oregon at this point look like the 4 best teams. Not talking about, oh, one didn't lose and all of that. That's just is what it is. But let's look at Georgia right now. Back-to-back champions. And when the rankings came in today, there was no chance that they were going to be anywhere except number 1. Now, the committee is not tasked with putting past results as a part of this, but it's hard to ignore a team that has won back-to-back championships and has continued to win over 29 games in a row. It is hard to ignore that. You have Michigan at number 2, big win over Ohio State, 30-24. But the question is still about J.J. McCarthy, because he has not had to lead them to a win. It's been the running game and it's been the defense. So how is he going to perform in those moments? Number 3, Washington. It's just win, 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 no matter what from them. They are 6-0 in 1-score games. 6-0. And what we've learned out in life, in college football, in basketball, anything else, you consistently play close games, you will fall off the cliff at some point in time. Now, the question about Washington is their win and end scenario. That's clear. But what happens if they lose to Oregon? We'll discuss that. And then Florida State. And there's a video on the channel today about this. Can they get jumped? Can Florida State, even with a win over Louisville, who is not well looked at right now after their loss last week, can they get jumped even as an undefeated team? Because they look totally different with Tate Rodemaker at quarterback than they did with Jordan Travis at quarterback. Well, Ohio State did it with Cardell Jones. Yeah, but Ohio State was still rolling. They went to the Big Ten championship and beat, who was it, Wisconsin by like 1,000 points. It was like 50, but still. And then you got Oregon at number 5. And a Pac-12 championship has to be a guaranteed playoff spot for them, which was probably the best conference in America this season. Number 6, Ohio State. They went down 4 spots from last week. And the question is, can they move back up? Because is there a scenario where they can backdoor in 2 times in a row? Backdoor into the college football playoff without playing in the Big Ten championship 2 years in a row? I don't think that scenario exists. And if so, it's one of them $10 million parlay scenarios where you put up $10 and then win $10 million. Because for Ohio State to backdoor in, think about this. You would have to have Washington win. You would have to have Georgia win. You need Michigan to win and beat Iowa. And then you need Texas and Florida State to lose. So you essentially need Oregon, Florida State, Texas, and Bama to all lose. That's a way, I guess, that you get Michigan and Ohio State in the college football playoff. But that doesn't even seem likely at this point, to be honest with you. And then number 7, Texas. Texas, who beat Texas Tech 57-7 this last week. They are trying to transitive property this whole thing. Hey, Oregon played a 1-score game against them in the beginning of the season in Lubbock. We won 57-7. We know the transitive property does not work in college football. It just doesn't work like that. But the other part about it is this is an entirely different Texas Tech team without Tyler Shuck at quarterback. But Texas is doing a great job of road blocking Alabama, which in past years usually does not have those roadblocks. Now the question is this going to stop teams from scheduling more quality non-conference games? Does that matter? But the other part about Alabama is, how can we stamp for Alabama? Because they hold the key to chaos. Remember that. How can we stamp for Alabama when Alabama just needed an angels in the outfield miracle, a muffed punt, and then a 4th down and 31 at the very end of the game to beat Auburn, who just lost to New Mexico State? And yes, I'm transitive property into that one because they lost by multiple scores. And Auburn has not proved to be a very good football team this year. They're all right. And at this point in time, it seems like the Alabama is doing the Shel Silverstein poem. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my toys to break so nobody else can play with them. Because Alabama at number 8, let's say, for instance, let's say that they beat number 1 Georgia. What happens? What happens then? Will the machine that is the college football playoff, that has had an SEC team in every single year, and the SEC's network in terms of ESPN, where they own 51% of the SEC's inventory, will they allow the SEC to be left out? Because imagine a scenario where Florida State wins 13-0, Michigan wins, Washington wins, Texas wins, and then you have Bama, who's at number 8, beat number 1 Georgia. Who are you going to put Bama in over? You're going to put them in over Texas, who beat them on their home field? Oh, they're playing better now. That went out the window last week against Auburn. And especially if Texas rolls, Because everybody keeps asking about the what about Bama scenario. Under what circumstances can you jump the Big 12 winning Texas, who wins convincingly? How can you jump them over them? That makes no sense. And you're going to jump them from 8 all the way. Let's say even if Oregon wins, you're going to jump them above Washington and Oregon? Come on, man. That will cause a mutiny. That will cause a major problem. But let's look at this scenario. Alabama wins, and then Texas wins convincingly. Oregon or Washington win. Give me either one. Michigan wins and Florida State wins. Because history tells us that they definitely will not leave the SEC out. But should they? Should they leave the SEC out? That's going to be a legitimate question if Alabama turns around and beats Georgia. Well, yes, if they beat Georgia. But then the question will be, should Alabama then go in front of Georgia? Should Alabama go in front of Texas? You guys leave this in the comments, because I do not see a world where that should be allowed to happen. But should and will is totally different. So Florida State is suffering from Louisville losing. That was a terrible loss. Terrible loss for Louisville. They had already lost to Pitt, which was a nasty loss. Then they lose again. Now, could that be the loss that ends up getting Florida State booted out of the playoff? Could Florida State, and there's a video on YouTube about this that I posted today as well. Could Florida State get booted out of the playoff because of what happened to Louisville? Because if they go beat Louisville by, a field goal, something like that, how does that work? Could then Oregon jump them and be in the 3 spot even if they win? Could Texas jump them? What are the scenarios for all of this? Because Florida State fans will be angry. They're like, we are undefeated. But then that goes to the conversation. Are we looking at the 4 best teams, or are we looking at, just because you're undefeated? Because all schedules are not created equal, as we know. Now, one of the other scenarios, what happens if Florida State loses to Louisville? Who does that clear a spot for? Does it clear a spot for a 1-loss Georgia team, or a 1-loss Bama team, or even a 1-loss Washington who lost in the Pac-12 championship? Those are the scenarios. Or even Texas. Does it clear a spot for 1-loss Texas if Florida State were to lose to Louisville? Who then takes that spot? If Georgia wins, then it will be Georgia, Michigan, and then Oregon. And then you would be looking at that 4th spot. That would probably, then people are going to get to debating about Washington and Texas. Because Texas lost to Oklahoma, who is way down in the teens. And Washington would have won the conference, ran the whole way, and then lost in the conference championship game. That'll be the big question there between a 1-loss Washington and a 1-loss Texas team. And then you'll have, a little bit of chaos there. But I also wanted to talk about how the rest of the rankings are playing into things. Because you have Missouri, the top 2-loss team, sitting at number 9. Penn State has moved up to number 10. Ole Miss at 11. Oklahoma at 12. And truthfully, Texas needed them in the Big 12 championship. But the entire conference now of the Big 12 is rooting for Oklahoma State. They do not want Texas to have anything nice on the way out. Louisville fell down to number 14. Arizona 15, which is an amazing 3-loss team at this point in time. This is a team in Arizona that nobody wants to play right now. 16 is Iowa, who is playing in the Big Ten championship versus Michigan. And I don't even understand how Iowa can possibly even win this game. They haven't even scored over 14 points since sometime in October. And they're still 10-2. Inexplicable. You have Oregon State sitting at number 20, which the committee clearly respects that team, and what Oregon dismantled them last week. So we will see there, because all of these games are then going to be impacted in terms of who gets New Year's Six bowl games. Now, the last New Year's Six spot is either going to go to Tulane or Liberty at this point in time. Tulane is 11-1, who's ranked ahead of them, who is ranked ahead of Liberty, who is 12-0. Now, I understand that they're in two different conferences and all of this stuff, but where else would this happen? Because Tulane is kind of living off of that victory against USC last year. And Liberty has a new head coach. And they're undefeated at this point in time, too. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle those two teams as they get to the New Year's Six bowl game. Which one of those teams will get a chance to go play against one of the big boys in the Power Five? But you guys, leave your comments. What four do you think gets in? Who do you think wins the conference championship games? And everything else. Make sure you share with a friend. Tell a friend about it. I'm George Wrighster. Peace out.